Welcome back to Left Anchor. I'm Alexei the Greek.
And I'm Ryan Cooper. So we have a special guest on today. All our guests are special, but this one's exceptionally special. We have Mr. Jase Short, who is a PhD student at the New School in Philosophy. He's been a socialist activist for many years. Here to come talk to us about Iran. A difficult, I feel like all our subjects are difficult these days. There's not really a lot of bright and sunny optimism going around. But anyways, welcome, Jase.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
I thought we could kick things off just with the state of play at the moment. I mean, things are changing on the ground pretty quickly, but, can you give us your sort of sense of understanding of, what's happening with regards to, the bombing campaign, the state of the Iranian military? Is anybody look likely to sort of consolidate a new government in Iran, that sort of thing?
Right. So the basic reality of a war, like a real war, not a symbolic exchange where you bomb and then you telegraph where you're going to send your missiles and so on, is that there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and just a big black box. We don't know a lot. But from what we can tell, the U.S. seems to have been not prepared for the nature of this war, which is stunning considering that this has been gamed out by the Pentagon for decades now. And armchair military people have talked about it and posted 1 million videos on YouTube about it. I think that there is a incredible amount of anxiety in Washington about the financial situation with the flow of commodities out of the Gulf, because it's not just oil, it's also liquid natural gas, it's also fertilizer.
Yeah, let's get
components for fertilizer. Yeah.
Can you be more explicit about that? Like folks may not understand the geography here around the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously like Iran and Saudi Arabia are right there, but like what else, is around that strait and what is going through there, and how come the Iranians are able to, block transit so easily?
So it's a really narrow strait going from the Persian Gulf into the broader ocean, and the Iranians have kind of literally the high ground of kind of raised terrain around this narrow strip. They haven't mined it as far as we understand at this point, which is once they drop mines, that's something that you can't really take back. And so that does suggest that there is at least a degree of reticence on Iran's side, because this also is dangerous for them economically. Their ports are contained within their most serious ports within the Persian Gulf. But so the Gulf Cooperation Council countries are 6 countries: Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Oman. And they are a significant node in the world market, a huge part of global capitalism. They, of course, are major suppliers of oil, in particular to Asia now, as the United States has sort of diversified itself away from the Persian Gulf and produces more of its own oil. But of course, liquefied natural gas. And part of the development of their economies in the 70s and the 80s and up through the period where they became more integrated in the early 2000s has been a lot of secondary sectors related to oil. So, steel, infrastructure, shipping, but also things related to petrochemicals. And that has basically positioned them. I'm not an expert on this particularly, but in terms of fertilizer, for like a lot of the chemical materials in it, they're about 1/3 of the supply on the globe. The thing is that we are headed towards planting season. And so these not getting out could result in a lot of problems in the supply chain for agriculture. And financially, of course, they take in a lot of cash. They sell it in dollars on the world market. And a lot of it is recycled back into the United States in the form of treasuries, but also investments in everything from stocks to sports teams, and companies like I think EA video game stuff. It's now Gulf owned. So there is talk now. This is just breaking in the last day that GCC countries are telling the United States that they're thinking about pausing future investments. And it's because they can't get the stuff out of the Strait of Hormuz, then they're not bringing in new money, then they're having a crisis. So it's not that they're pulling their money necessarily out of existing things, though that is an option that they've laid out, but future investments that they have already sort of planned that are in the workings could be subject to review, which could be, so Iran's strategy of firing rockets at these Gulf states, it's something that we've seen Jon Stewart lampoon it, which was very disappointing for me to watch on The Daily Show because, I have differences with this politics, but just the idea that you could be in such a significant position in U.S. politics for this long, and we have come close to war with Iran for so long, to not understand the crucial nature of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries seems to me like it's a failure of your imagination. And anyway, Trump himself seems to have been completely taken aback, surprised. Why them? They didn't participate in the bombing. They're not part of this war. But it seems to be the strategy is paying off in some way. So there's all these folks who can't, fly out of Dubai. They can't fly out of any of these countries. They're stranded.
I think
Qatar
canceled. They used the force majeure clause to cancel the liquid natural gas contracts with buyers already.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
So that's already in motion.
Yeah. So there's a lot of very wealthy and powerful people who are putting pressure now on the administration to resolve this in some way. And I think my basic take, and I just kind of summarize this here, is Israel knew what it was doing. They would laser-like focus. They want the decomposition of the Iranian state, however that looks. The United States is blundering. Trump imagines himself invincible in foreign policy. He thinks that every time he went with his gut in the first administration, he was right. And after Venezuela, he's drunk on power. And as a boomer, he's somebody who was very influenced by the media spectacle of the Iran hostage crisis. And he wants to be the guy to take them down. And he thought he could do it. And now he's stuck with a disaster. And the final thing I'll say on that is, if the goal is to wipe out the leadership and negotiate with the next rung down, then they have to stop killing the next rung down. And this is the problem. Israel, and seemingly the United States too, just continually target the leadership. If you're going to negotiate, you have to negotiate with somebody. You can't just keep killing them. And anybody who might decide to negotiate on the Iranian side has to be like, well, every time we talk to you, we end up dead. Literally me physically dead.
Yeah.
So
one wonders between Israel and the U.S. and what Netanyahu intends and what Trump doesn't understand, whether the killing of all the potential reformers or all the people that the U.S. might want to put in as puppet leaders, the fact that they were killed, if that was an intentional thing by Netanyahu and Israel in order to further destabilize and lead to chaos, and whether the U.S. just didn't realize that was going to happen. Or if it was just a blunder on the U.S.'s part. I mean, it's kind of hard to say in the fog of war, but what are your thoughts on the U.S.-Israel kind of strategic collaboration in that sense?
It does seem like I'm not. There are folks who will. Israel's behind everything. Israel guides the United States. The United States does Israel's will, and that's not my general politics. But the way that I've seen things unfold since October 7th, Israel has been leading the U.S. by the nose through a lot of things. That was because basically the personalities of our two presidents, I feel like.
Yeah.
Biden was uniquely disposed to just do whatever Israel wanted, more so than any other Democrat, it seems. And then Trump has he and Kushner have these relationships with Netanyahu, but also these Gulf princes, these Gulf billionaires who are
bribing
in
him.
Various, yeah. They're bribing him, and they're in league, yeah. And there's like promises of Trump Tower, Dubai, and all this stuff. So it seems that Netanyahu is telling us exactly what's going on from his perspective. This has been my dream for 40 years. I've been preparing for this all the time, and here they are. They're now invading Lebanon, and they're attacked. They say that this is the goal of this one is to end Hezbollah once and for all. Whether that's true, we'll have to see. But, they have managed to get the United States into a shooting war that it can't extract itself from with Iran, giving themselves the cover to relaunch their operation in Lebanon while they're not bogged down in Gaza. The Syrian regime has fallen, and there's rumors right now that there's some cooperation between the current government in Syria and Israel on this operation, which is completely believable given Hezbollah's role in the civil war and the Syrian government's dependence on Gulf countries for capital, for arms, for having gotten where he is. So, yeah, it seems that Israel knows what it's doing. It has a plan and it's pushing it through, and the United States is asleep at the wheel. And we're being dragged along into this. And it seems like at some level at the top of the administration, there's either an internal critique or just idiocy, where we had Rubio come out and say that Secretary of State Marco Rubio came out and said that, well, of course it was a preemptive strike. Israel was going to attack Iran, and then they would hit us. So we had to hit them first. Beyond the Orwellian aspects, which Rubio seems to I feel like he gets some sort of pleasure out of saying the most absurd things, with the recent Cuba thing where there was the Cuban Coast Guard shot some people who were trying to come into the country with guns. He said, it's not normal to have shootouts in the Caribbean, just after all these bombings, and he looked at us, he said that with a straight face. I don't know. That aside, so he said that, and then the administration tried to walk it back, and then they unwalked it back, and then they walked it back again, and I don't know. It's really unclear to me. And Trump being surprised about the consequences makes me think that either there is just and this is believable, catastrophic incompetence around him, where people didn't want to tell him any bad news, or he was promised one thing by Netanyahu, and now the reality is hit.
Yeah, I think another thing to underline maybe is how the unbelievable incompetence of what they're doing here, which is really beggars belief. It surprises even me. As you point out in your newsletter post, they hit a girls' elementary school and killed 175 people or something. It would be worse than the worst attacks of the whole war on terror, all 20 odd years of it. And that it's either incompetence or psychopathic brutality, maybe a combination of both. You definitely see the latter thing in this attack on an Iranian naval vessel. It was like a frigate or something. And it was, I didn't realize this, I was like, oh, they blew up a frigate all the way over by India. What's it doing over there? I thought it was just traveling. No, it was like a big international exercise thing that the United States had been planning to participate in, then pulled out at the last second so that they could shoot this frigate that was totally unarmed. They blew it up just for fun, so that without the slightest chance of it even being able to fight back. It's some folks who are at a peace conference or something, shooting people under a flag of truce, comparable to that, the type of shit that Sauron would do. And you sort of struggle to even put words to it. And then meanwhile, back to this sort of incompetence, it was they seemingly made no plan whatsoever to get all of the, no doubt, tens or even hundreds of thousands of American citizens who are in all these Gulf countries plus Israel. Clearly the State Department is completely fucked. It is just not functioning except as, sort of a part of the whole regime's war machine. The ordinary functions of stuff where you would plan to do this type, that they would have the capacity to organize flights and stuff and get people out of there. It's they don't know how to do it, and they don't really seem to care. Elon Musk fired all those people, and fuck them, who cares? Yeah, the people in Dubai, all of our American citizens over there getting blown up, whatever. You know, all I wanted to do was to get a video that I could post on Twitter of this ship being blown up. And that seemed to be like priority number one for the people running the military, or war fighters from Pete Hegseth. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, does that sort of square with your perception there? Just the way that this has sort of taken, you know, really even like so much worse than the way George W. Bush ran things. I never thought I'd see it, but an even more psychopathically callous and stupid president. But we've got it. We've got it.
Yeah, it does. So the school thing might be even more horrifying than it seemed at first. So there are reports now from various journalistic outfits that are suggesting that the U.S. is involved in a leaked thing that I saw go to Reuters. The U.S. itself thinks that it was responsible. Like, this is, you know, you would know, but apparently there was a double tap strike where they hit it, they waited for people to respond and show up, and then they hit it again. The logic here is that this is an elementary school next to a Iranian Revolutionary Guard base. So there might have been targets, specific people they wanted to kill whose children went to the school. So what one report that I heard was the first hit, and then the call goes out, come pick up your kids right now. And then when that target, or they thought that target arrived, then they hit it again. And that's what resulted in the massacre. Now, that's not confirmed, but
it totally fits with Gaza, though. It fits with absolutely what the IDF does in Gaza, you know? It
does. It fits. And it also, you know, it's multiple reporting saying that this is the United States. It was a double tap. And that seems to me the most logical reason. Because at first I was just trying to figure out, like, why? Why this school? Why here? You know, you're trying to instill terror. You're also trying to supposedly inspire people to rise up. So that's the other thing. That's shocking. And on the naval vessel, you're exactly right. That was destroyed for the Twitter video. That's it. As far as I can tell, that was a cruel act. They didn't try to save, you know, the sailors, which is just a basic thing you do in war. They left the Sri Lankans to do that. It was a stunning act of cruelty, and you can see it with Hegseth. I can't listen to him talk for very long. It's
too upsetting. Yeah,
it is. It's like the manosphere type has made its way to the halls of power, and he doesn't understand how anything works. And just to take a brief philosophical digression, this warrior over soldier thing that he puts, it kind of gets to the heart of it. Like a warrior, like thinking back to like the Iliad, you know, I'm a classics ancient philosophy person. A warrior is somebody who fights for their own glory. And it doesn't matter if they really win or lose, as long as they die well and die heroically. And the ultimate logic of the Iliad is that this is stupid. This is a bad way to live. And isn't it sad how people used to live like that? Because here I am, Homer or whoever, composing this hundreds of years after that time period. That was a mad, mad world. And now we have soldiers, and soldiers fight in units, and they fight for the purpose of defending their polis, and they fight for the purpose of defending their people to their right and their left. And there's a different kind of logic to that is, you know, a kind of human progress in a way, other than just, I'm a big, strong man, and I can take the most women and burn the most villages. And like it's a childish display. And I think Jamel Bowie, who, you know, he's a New York Times guy, but I love him. I love listening to his stuff. He says that, you know, everything with this administration is gender. It's gender all the way down.
Yeah.
It's always about being a man, you know, the transphobia stuff, you know, women can't fight in war. And it's like, you know, one of those pilots shot down in Kuwait was a woman. Hegseth had to, like, you know, announce that. So I think that there's incompetence and there's cruelty, and there's just this desire for images that they can show us of how tough they are.
Yeah. So neurotic, you know, ironically, given the whole manosphere alpha male chest pounding shit. It's just, it's all about an anxious display, you know, of strength rather than actually just being strong. And the other irony of it, I guess, is that, you know, it reminds me very much of how like the Japanese behaved in World War II. Incredibly brutal fighters. You know, they viewed parts of the war effort, like logistics, supply, agriculture, all that stuff that was like, oh, that's second tier. That's not about real fighting. Real fighting is getting out there in combat and mixing it up with the enemy, fighting, being an ace, being a warrior, bonsai charge into prepared defenses and just getting mowed the fuck down by machine gun fire. And that's a huge reason why they lost, because it was the American submarines just like picking off the Japanese merchant marine and destroying their shipping capacity. It was just a very boring and complicated logistics effort in the United States to build up, production and armaments and whatnot. And it was like, every lesson, an army marches on its stomach. It's literally the goddamn cliche going back to what, Napoleon or whatever. But I mean, God, when Hegseth is out there, I was like, yeah, we're getting rid of all the rules of engagement and we're turning this pussy girl stuff, like, rules. We're not having a woke war. That's what he means. That's what that is. It's blowing up a girls' school so that you could maybe kill his dad, or maybe just for fun. That's what that is.
Just to show that you can.
Yeah. It reminds me, they probably also loved the fun fact that the torpedo hadn't taken something down since World War II, and that was like a big thing they could brag about. And then that also reminds me that they were doing double taps in the Caribbean and off the coast of Venezuela with the fishing boats. They were waiting for the survivors to like cling to life and then hitting them again. So it's they view not doing war crimes as being woke. So. That just shows that the level of insecurity and misogyny and self-loathing. We have like toxic masculinity combined with moronic greed, and then like the brains and mentality of like little junior high boys, you know what I mean, who are playing with their toys and who think that they can like show off to their friends. It's just it's the most surreal, pathetic reason for unnecessarily suffering and death possible. But now it's bringing in NATO, and the unforeseen consequences foreseen by many are creating what you titled one of your posts, Persian Gulf World War. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
So it's mostly, it was a fun title, and I'm not saying that this is there's always folks coming out, this is World War III, which happens every year, but it is a world war in the sense that it's spanning from Iran all the way to Lebanon. It's limited in various ways at the moment. The only real ground operation is Israel's invasion of Lebanon, which we're not really sure, I don't think at the moment, how extensive it is, whether it's just bravado. That they're saying that this is going to be the end of Hezbollah, like that would require a sustained occupation up through Beirut. And it is bringing this crisis of the relationships between these various power centers in global capitalism to a head. The Gulf countries, yes, but also Europe. And so French and British bases have been hit. Cyprus has been hit. Spain has said it will participate. Not at all. And the United States is saying that no trade. And then the European Union is saying, well, that's not how things work in the European Union. And I think that, you also have to look at next door, and there's a war now between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So there's basically war from the Himalayas all the way to the Mediterranean. And of course, there's war on the African continent with, Sudan in particular. And there's a lot of instability as the system of local states are kind of fragmenting, and then there's these imperial interventions that accomplish very little. And in general, and I think this is related to people like Hegseth being in the Pentagon, I have this general thing I've talked to a lot of people about. We've even had like meetings and discussions about the decay of the ruling class in the United States and Europe, particularly the United States, but both, where you have essentially, you had a generation of people who had to fight real class struggles, real wars, real Cold Wars, and revolutions and so on. Then their children essentially have taken over, and they're pampered, and they're undisciplined, and they're used to buying their way out of every problem. And they have no, again, my ancient stuff is coming up, no virtue. Like instead of virtue, they replaced it with money. There's some marks for you, like they can buy what they need instead of having actual virtue. And now they're in charge. And the consequence, is here for us all to see. It's chaos. It's breakdown. It's everybody. It feels like everybody almost everywhere hates their governments, hates the people who are in charge, hates the way things are going. And we're not sure how to get rid of them. And so it's the reason why this has become a world conflict is because the people at the top of the United States, they built this machinery of death and destruction and hemmed in Iran and all this. They created this, and then they let the person at the helm surround himself with a bunch of yes people who have no expertise and no idea how things work, and primarily are motivated by, on the one hand, social media posts and feeling better about themselves. On the other hand, like branding. And then the hardcore of them are bizarre Christian nationalists who just want to destroy the state. So yes.
We should mention that, by the way, about Christian nationalism. The report that there are 200 complaints coming from the military that they were told that the war is bringing about Armageddon, and that was the motivation for them to go out and do holy war.
And I think that's, it's part also of the bizarre incoherence of what they're saying in public. So you've got these people, Hegseth, we want to kill, dominate, destroy, atrocities. And then you've got these, we're going to bring about the second coming of Jesus types who think Muslims are the enemy. But at the same time, they want to say that we are here to defend Muslims. We've lost the fact that all of this started with, if you shoot those protesters, Trump said, there will be consequences. And now it's about missiles. Now it's about nuclear weapons. Now it's about the regime, but it's not about the regime. And they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And so the Christian nationalist stuff, I mean, it's such a bizarre mix. Like you've got the Dominionist types. They don't typically like the end times talk because it promotes Christians to just kind of like sit back and watch everything burn. When like the Dominionists, of which Hegseth is a member of one of those churches, they want to take over and make the laws like reflect the Old Testament. Like that's their agenda. But the Air Force in particular has been kind of dominated by these evangelical types who are really into Armageddon and the tribulation and the Antichrist and the rapture. And, now that seems to have spread to these other branches too, and these mid-level people. They'll tell us, and there's so many memes about this right now, that, we're fighting religious fundamentalists in Iran. And it's like, but who are you? Like, what are you doing? What are these beliefs are bizarre. They're not, they're from the 1800s. They're American. They're not really standard Christian doctrine anywhere. They're weird. They're partly based on the science fiction books, the Left Behind series that were so popular in the 2000s.
Yeah, maybe not a great precedent to set to say if there's a corrupt government with religious fanatics, then another country is allowed to take them out. that wouldn't redound well to the Trump administration, right?
I remember those books when I was growing up. The evangelical assholes when I was in
so popular.
High school were reading those books. I mean, the thing about that is the Antichrist in there. What's his name? Nikolai Carpathia. Yeah. He's exactly like Donald Trump. He's like this silver-tongued businessman who claims to be like a big-time religious believer, but is like secretly a fucking monster. Yeah. One thing I would to add to your like world part of this, I was just reading like literally right before we read on. There's some reports that I guess China is considering arming and supporting Iran for the reason, obviously, that you can harm the U.S. by doing so, but also like Iran provides a big share of China's oil, which it still needs for the time being, but not for very much longer, because its oil demand has gone down by quite a bit because EVs are now more than half of all new car sales. But at any rate, it still needs a lot of oil, and it gets a lot of that from Iran, and so you could imagine why they're pissed off. But it's also, your classic sort of proxy war thing where you can, bloody the opponent by letting the other guy do the fighting for you. That's the end of the preview, folks. If you'd like to listen to the rest of the episode, you can subscribe at patreon.com/leftanchor, where for $5 a month, you can get our bonus episodes. And at $10 a month, you can get our bonus episodes, plus also a roughly 60% off discount on an American Prospect print subscription. We've changed how that one works. And if you're having any trouble with that, by the way, as an existing subscriber, shoot us an email at leftanchorpodcast@gmail.com. We'll get you sorted out. In any case, thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one.